No, go ahead. Here, you just take that.
Mr. Anthony, it's my understanding that Dominic Casey went out to the woods where Kaylee was ultimately found before she was discovered. That's your understanding as well?
That's what I understand, yes. But I had no knowledge of that until after we came back from L.A., which was like, December 11th or something like
And
that.
Dominic Casey had gone out into those woods, to your understanding, weeks before. Is that correct?
Just what I saw on TV, what's been released. That's all I knew.
Okay.
I knew nothing about his investigation day by day. I didn't know all that.
When he was working for you, he was not required to give you a report or updates?
I'm going to object to that. It's privilege.
Okay. And that's how we need to answer this. Okay. And the first day that that Dominic Casey went to the woods, is it your understanding that he called Mr. Hoover to his office before they went out there?
That's a possibility, sir. I don't know this. I don't know the scenario or the circumstances how they got together. I really don't know.
The day that he went out in the woods, did Mr. Casey call you and say, we have received, you or anyone in your family, and call you and say, we have received a tip, we have found the body?
No, I'm going to object to that. That's privilege. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, Dominic, I never received a phone call from Dominic or Jim Hoover about any of this stuff that was going on.
And they were employed by you?
Jim Hoover was not employed by us. That's
Correct.
One specific thing we need to be there.
You're right.
He was brought on as a security individual, not as a private investigator. He was assisting Mr. Casey in security matters around our home. Okay. He was not involved in the investigation at all for my granddaughter.
Who was paying Mr. Casey?
Objection. Same thing. Privilege.
Okay.
Do you mean...
Was Mr. Anthony paying Mr. Casey?
I'm going to object to that.
Okay. And was anyone...
Just real quick, he's been employed by Mr. Baez as well as Miss Anthony. So
that's a different question.
I understand.
That's a different question. You're taking privileges here that we just need to,
Yeah.
But the question is, the first question is, was Mr. Casey employed at any time by Cindy, Anthony, George Anthony, Lee Anthony, any Anthony in that home?
Dominic has been our private investigator, I believe, since about November of last year. Give or take a week or so.
And that means that by our, you mean your and Cindy's investigator?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's a yes.
That's a yes.
And were you paying Mr. Anthony for his services?
Was I paying Mr. Casey, you mean? That's okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. We have an agreement set up, but then again, when no money's exchanged hands or anything like that. So
he has not been paid by you all as of yet.
Okay.
Now, on the date, what is the arrangement to pay?
I'm going to object to that. It's a privilege.
Privilege? Okay. Is it contingent? Is the payment to Mr. Casey contingent on a source of money coming in at a later date as a result of this case?
You can go ahead and answer it.
No, because I don't think there's any money's contingents on this particular case.
Just answer the question. Let
No.
them ask the next question.
No.
Contingent on any third party bringing money to the family?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Casey was employed by us to bring our granddaughter
That's
home.
it.
How did you find Mr. Casey?
Met him through Jose Baez at Jose's office one day. That's going back months.
And
the specific date, I have no idea what the date was.
Did Jose Baez hire Mr. Casey as well?
Honestly, that'd be something you have to ask him. I have no idea.
Has monies ever exchanged between Mr. Casey and Mr. Baez?
You'd have to ask them. Sorry, I have no idea.
Your answer is I don't know?
No, I don't know.
And how often, when was the first time that you were introduced to Mr. Casey?
Oh, God, that's going back months. I'm not specific. It could have, I don't know. I'm not really sure. It was one time last year after.
But
this
just
stuff
so
happened.
just so I understand, Mr. Casey was brought to you by Mr. Baez,
I just met him through his office, and that was it.
and then you hired him as a result of that meeting.
Dominic came to us and wanted to assist us, so it's.
Dominic came and asked you to hire him.
Well, maybe not that specific things, but we just had met Dominic through Jose, and I just know he was there wanting to find our granddaughter and put forth the effort to look for her.
Did you sign a retainer with him?
I didn't sign a retainer with him, no.
So everything's verbal between you and him as far as payments go. Not to get into specific payments, but just as far as payments go.
Yes.
Okay.